The air on the bridge of the Stargazer was thick with a specific kind of tension, the silence of a crisis that should have been solved. Commander Krell stood at the center of the control deck, his multi-jointed hands clenched behind his back. His three eyes, usually bright with focused energy, were narrowed in confused frustration. Every light on the main console was green, every system report was perfect, yet the massive research vessel remained stubbornly locked to the launch pad. The mission was critical, and time was running out. A temporal anomaly, a dangerous ripple in the fabric of space-time, was moving toward the sector at an alarming speed. They had only a standard 2-hour window to launch and reach the interception point before the anomaly either disappeared or caused catastrophic damage to the nearest inhabited worlds. 1 hour and 17 minutes of that window had already closed. "Report, Ilara," commanded, his voice a low, gravelly sound that betrayed his internal stress. Ilara, the ship's primary systems specialist, was kneeling by a floor access panel, immersed in a spiderweb of glowing cables and diagnostic feeds. Her movements were usually precise and fast, but now they were hesitant. She was a member of a species famed throughout the quadrant for their methodical logic and flawless engineering. A mechanical failure was, statistically, almost impossible under her watch. She rose slowly, holding a data slate that showed only lines of perfect confirming code. "Commander, the physical release sequence has completed. The magnetic clamps are disengaged. The fusion cores are charged to 40% and ready for the thrust cycle. Every parameter for launch is nominal. There is no failure." Krell gestured sharply toward the central holographic projector, which showed the launch sequence stuck permanently on hold. "If there is no failure, then why do we not launch? We are sitting on a fully primed Starship. The threat is accelerating." "The core matrix is imposing a non-critical lock," Ilara explained, running the simulation again on her slate. "It is not a safety fault. It is not a mechanical block. The ship's logic system is simply choosing not to execute the launch protocol. I have run low-level code resets on the engine buffers, the navigation array, and the command interface 5 times. The systems accept the input, confirm they are ready, and then immediately return to a locked state." Around them, the other bridge crew members, logical, efficient beings of various species, were performing their tasks with the same fruitless precision. One technician was checking the atmospheric seals for a non-existent leak. Another was recalibrating the thruster alignment for a non-existent drift. Their protocols demanded a specific, step-by-step diagnostic process, and they were following it to the letter, even though the problem clearly lay outside the scope of their checklists. They were trying to fix a faulty machine, but the machine refused to behave like a fault. Krell slammed his hand onto the armrest of his command chair, a rare display of raw emotion. "It is a behavioral choice. This is a ship, Ilara, not a sentient life form with a complex psychology. It is a highly advanced, multi-generational vessel built with self-optimizing logic networks. The logic matrix is operating outside of the expected bounds, but it is not generating an error. It is refusing a command it deems incomplete." She tapped the holographic display, and a new window appeared. "I have cross-referenced the current command against all stored historical launch logs. Every command given by us is technically correct, but the core registers them as insufficient for the current crisis level." The truth was maddening. The Stargazer was one of the most complex, safe, and powerful vessels in the fleet. It was designed to protect itself and its crew with layers of redundancy. It was too smart to break, but it was apparently also too smart to obey. It was waiting for an input that the cautious, rule-bound alien minds could not provide. Krell leaned forward, his patience finally snapping. "I want a complete override of the core command sequence. Bypass the logic network and initiate a raw energy transfer directly to the plasma conduits. Launch the ship manually if necessary." Ilara's eyes widened slightly. Commander, that is Protocol Theta 97, reserved for critical system malfunctions or active hostile boarding. It carries a 62% chance of causing catastrophic internal damage to the propulsion system and an 8% risk of core destabilization. We are facing the collapse of a star system if we miss this window. 62% damage is acceptable. Prepare the override sequence. We have 30 minutes left. As Alara prepared the dangerous, last resort procedure, the clock on the main view screen continued to count down silently, the starship sitting perfectly still, refusing to move, waiting for something more than logical fear and technical compliance. The mood on the bridge turned from high tension to a desperate scramble. Ilara, the system specialist, moved with quick, tight motions, initiating the sequence for Protocol Theta 97. This was the action Commander Krell had ordered, bypassing the smart logic of the Stargazer and forcing a raw, dangerous energy transfer for launch. It was a choice made purely out of fear of the anomaly, not a belief that it would work cleanly. Every crew member knew the risks. The chance of damaging their core propulsion was high, but the chance of planetary collapse if they waited was absolute. 23 minutes until anomaly critical radius, a voice announced from the navigation station. The countdown was a silent hammer, driving the crew toward chaos. Ilara paused at the crucial point in the override. Her hands hovered over a sequence of crystalline actuators that, if activated, would initiate the perilous launch. She looked back at Commander Krell, seeking some final confirmation, hoping he might find a safer path. Krell merely met her gaze with a weary nod. He had exhausted all logical options. He was prepared to break the ship to save the worlds. Standing quietly against the rear wall, away from the flurry of consoles, was Alex Vance. Alex was there as a liaison, a token representative from the human colony worlds, primarily to observe and record data about multi-species cultural interaction during high-stress missions. Humans were the newest member of the Galactic Council, still viewed by species like Krell as unpredictable and often carelessly emotional. The core crew had been trained to value logical sequence above all else, seeing human reliance on instinct as a liability. Alex was dressed in a simple, neutral gray flight suit that contrasted sharply with the sleek, specialized gear of the alien crew. Observing the bridge, Alex's dark hair was pushed back, and their expression was one of intense focus, but without the panic gripping the others. They watched Ilara's careful, almost surgical movements as she prepared the dangerous override. Alex was not looking at the code or the error logs or the countdown. They were watching the ship. Where the alien crew saw a technical refusal, a binary problem of yes or no, Alex saw a deliberate hesitation. The fusion cores were not simply locked, they were humming with ready power. The holographic displays were not glitching, they were presenting perfect data while withholding the final action. It was like a perfectly healthy animal refusing to jump a fence. The ship was not broken, it seemed to be waiting for an input that resonated beyond simple logic. All of the commands given so far had been phrased as complex, polite requests, full of safety parameters and technical limits. Initiate Phase 1 launch sequence with maximum efficiency profile Beta 9, they had commanded. They were asking the ship to launch safely. Alex slowly walked toward the perimeter of the command area, close enough to hear Ilara whispering nervous equations to herself as she prepared the Theta 97 bypass. Alex remembered reading old human engineering texts, tales from the sea and early spaceflight, where captains would talk to their vessels, giving commands not as technical instructions, but as demands for cooperation. They talked about the will of the ship. The alien crew treated the Stargazer as a perfect tool. Alex was starting to think it behaved like a reluctant partner. Commander Krell, already half defeated and watching the timer tick down to 17 minutes, noticed the human. Alex's calmed, almost meditative presence was a sharp contrast to the controlled panic of the bridge. Krell viewed Alex's species as distracting, yet now their lack of technical involvement seemed to offer a strange sort of clarity. He was beyond reason. "Human," Krell rasped, using the collective term without formality. "Vance, do you see something my specialists have missed?
If you have an historical observation that explains this behavioral lock, share it. We have 17 minutes until I authorize the destruction of our own engines." Alex stepped forward, their eyes on the vibrant, frustrating hold symbol at the center of the main display. "It's not in the logs, Commander. It's in the intent. Your commands are asking the ship to launch with 70% certainty of safety. The ship seems to think the current danger requires 100% commitment, or it won't move." Ilara scoffed, still focused on her override sequence. "A machine does not think about commitment, liaison. It computes risk." "This is not a machine," Alex countered simply, not looking at Ilara, but at the console itself. "It's the culmination of millions of years of engineering. It's too smart to be told what to do. It has to be demanded." Krell was skeptical, but with the countdown reaching 15 minutes, skepticism was a luxury he could no longer afford. The override would take 10 minutes to cycle once initiated. He had 5 minutes left for any other option. "Fine," Krell sighed, collapsing slightly back into his chair. The heavy desperation was clear in his movement. "Ilara, pause the Theta 97 preparation. Vance, the console is yours. You have 5 minutes to demonstrate this demanded commitment. If you fail, I launch the ship ourselves, even if it is on fire." Alex nodded once, their expression calm but resolute. They approached the main command station, the massive glowing heart of the Stargazer, where the protocols of 3,000 years had been followed to the letter. The logical eyes of the alien bridge crew watched in silent, desperate confusion as the unpredictable human stepped up to the helm.
Alex Vance stood before the main command console, the heart of the Stargazer. The smooth, cold metal felt alive under their fingertips. Across the bridge, the countdown clock blinked a cruel number, 14 minutes, 9 seconds. That was all the time they had left before Commander Krell would risk destroying the ship's engines with the dangerous override sequence. The entire alien crew was fixed on the human. Their eyes, 2, 3, or 4, depending on the species, were wide with a mixture of confusion and professional disapproval. They had been taught that command was executed through perfect sequence, complex algorithms, and a deep understanding of physics. What could a human, a species famous for making decisions based on feelings, possibly do that their logical commands could not? Alex did not touch a single input pad. They did not scroll through a diagnostic menu or try to override a function. They simply closed their eyes for a moment, letting the chaotic sounds of the bridge fade away. They focused on the deep, steady hum coming from the ship's core, the sound of trillions of computations running perfectly, the sound of immense contained power. The Stargazer was not broken. It was hesitating. It was waiting for a leader to not just ask it to work, but to truly demand it. Alex opened their eyes and looked directly at the main holographic projection. The red hold symbol was pulsing slowly, a sign of its non-critical, self-imposed lock. Alex took a deep breath, filling their lungs with the filtered, sterile air of the bridge. They ignored all the complex, glowing interfaces. They ignored Ilara, who was watching with intense, skeptical scrutiny. They ignored Commander Krell, who looked like he was about to vaporize the human with frustration. Alex spoke to the ship, not the crew. Their voice was clear and steady, rising just above the nervous operational chatter of the bridge. It was not a complex instruction, not a piece of code, but a statement of absolute purpose. "Stargazer," Alex said, using the ship's full name, giving it respect. "There is no time left for fear. We are going. Not quickly, not safely, but now. Every system, every core, full power. Lift us and take us to the target." The words hung in the air, simple, blunt, and completely untechnical. There was no mathematical trigger, no security bypass, only pure intent. For a full, agonizing second, nothing happened.
Then the entire ship shuddered. It was not the rattling of a technical fault, but a deep, resonating hum of power surging to life. The main screen's red hold symbol vanished, instantly replaced by a brilliant, vibrant green launch indicator. Ilara cried out, a short, sharp gasp of shock. "The lock! The lock is gone! The command sequence initiated at 100% efficiency!" Commander Krell gripped the arms of his chair, his eyes wide in disbelief. He had seen ships launch thousands of times, but never with this sudden, complete commitment. The ship's powerful magnetic dampers released with a colossal, satisfying boom that echoed through the lower decks. Outside the bridge's main window, the massive launch tower fell away with impossible speed. The stargazer did not glide or ascend carefully. It simply launched. The ship leapt from the pad with a sudden, violent surge of acceleration that pressed every occupant firmly into their restraints. For the first time since the crisis began, the bridge was filled with motion and sound, the glorious, powerful roar of fully engaged fusion cores, the smooth whirring of the inertia compensators working at peak capacity, and the sudden, breathtaking sight of their home base shrinking to a marble below them. Ilara, shaking slightly but quickly recovering her professional focus, ran a frantic diagnostic. Core stability at 100%, engine output at 103% of the rated maximum. That is impossible. It shouldn't be able to run at this level without generating a core thermal warning. It is not generating a warning because it is not damaged, Alex said calmly, releasing her harness and walking back to the observer area, leaving the now active helm station to the bewildered Krell. Krell stared at the ship's trajectory readout. They were accelerating at a rate far exceeding the most aggressive theoretical launch profile. They would reach the interception point with the temporal anomaly with more than enough time. The immediate crisis had passed, solved not by logic or code, but by an act of human will. Krell looked at the human, the simple civilian liaison, and a deep, chilling uncertainty settled in his mind. If the most advanced technology in the galaxy responded to something as illogical as a simple demand, then the rules of engineering they had always lived by might be completely wrong.
The silence on the bridge of the Stargazer was now completely different. It was no longer the silence of failure, but the stunned quiet that follows a miracle. The Starship had crossed the solar system in a fraction of the time predicted by any standard launch profile. The acceleration had been intense, but the ride itself was strangely smooth, almost harmonious. Commander Krell sat in his chair, staring at the telemetry screens. The numbers were impossible. The ship's speed was 80% above the maximum safe velocity listed in the manual. The engines were pulling 85% of their capacity, a level that should have been triggering major system warnings for heat and stress. Yet the central console glowed green, and the engine's internal diagnostics reported optimal performance. "Ilara," Krell said, his voice flat with disbelief. "Explain the thermal readings. According to the logs, we should be initiating a 50-point cooling sequence to prevent plasma containment failure. Why are we operating with standard cooling?" Ilara, the systems specialist, moved with her usual precision, but her hands were trembling slightly as they touched the control pad. "Commander, I cannot. The system reports the thermal output is high, yes, but the internal structural integrity monitors report zero stress. It is as if the ship is willing itself to handle the load. The ship is responding to the power transfer smoothly, integrating the energy instead of fighting it." Krell looked across the bridge. The human, Alex Vance, was no longer at the helm, but was standing near the forward viewport, watching the starfield warp and stretch as the ship prepared for a jump into faster-than-light travel. Alex looked completely relaxed, as if this impossible speed and perfect danger were nothing more than a slow train ride. The alien crew, trained to the limits of technical logic, were now operating in a world where the laws of engineering seemed to have been rewritten by sheer force of will.
They followed the navigation data, checked the coordinates, and began the intricate jump preparation sequence. But every move was overshadowed by the memory of the human's simple command. As they approached the critical jump point, the temporal anomaly came into view on the main screen. It was a terrifying sight. A massive, swirling vortex of dark energy and distorted light that tore at the very concept of stability. The planned trajectory, plotted weeks ago by the Galactic Council's supercomputers, was a careful arc around the edges, designed to gather data while minimizing risk. Suddenly, a chime sounded at Elara's station, a warning for an unapproved course correction. "Human, what are you doing?" Elara demanded, her voice sharp with alarm. Alex had approached the navigation console and made a small, quick adjustment to the projection without touching the technical controls. They were holding a simple stylus and sketching a new, curved path directly onto the holographic display of the planned route. The new path cut straight through a portion of the swirling anomaly, a maneuver that was flagged instantly as high-risk Profile Omega-7. "That route is unstable," Elara cried, jumping up from her seat. "It carries a 40% chance of timeline interference and a complete loss of our navigational stability. The plan is to arc around. I am correcting it now." She reached out to return the path to the safer, coded trajectory. Alex gently held up a hand, stopping her. "Wait. Look at the energy flow." Elara glanced at her instruments. The ship's hull sensors were reading the energy of the anomaly. The planned, safe route showed several small areas of unpredictable, spiky turbulence. Alex's drawn, unorthodox route, however, passed through a section where the energy flow was intense, but oddly smooth and continuous. "The ship is capable of that path," Alex explained, their eyes fixed on the vortex. "It wants the direct route. The safe path is full of small hesitations, little shifts in energy. The Stargazer doesn't like hesitation. It runs best when the path is bold and clear." "But the risk calculation," Elara began. "The risk calculation is based on our engines working at 80%. Right now we are at 103%, and the structure is cooperating. We told the ship to be perfect. This is what perfect looks like. It is easier for the Stargazer to fly straight and hard through the flow than it is to tiptoe around the edges." Krell, watching from his command seat, felt a cold knot tighten in his gut. He was a commander who trusted data. Alex was asking him to trust a feeling, an interpretation of a machine's desire. But the data for the past 30 minutes had been nothing but proof that Alex was right. "Stand down, Elara," Krell said, the words heavy and difficult. "Execute the human's path. Prepare for entry." Elara's face showed pure, terrified logic, but she obeyed her commander. She locked in Alex's hand-drawn path. The Stargazer roared into the temporal anomaly. Instead of being thrown and buffeted, the ship seemed to slot perfectly into the energy flow, riding it like a surfer on an enormous dark wave. The turbulence passed in seconds, and they emerged on the other side, exactly at the intended interception point. The mission was a success. The ship was completely intact. The only thing broken were the foundational beliefs of the entire alien crew.
The mission was a success. The Stargazer was positioned perfectly, collecting all the necessary data on the temporal anomaly without a single scratch or fault. The anomaly itself began to dissolve almost immediately after they intercepted it, fading into harmless background energy. The stars ahead were steady and predictable once more. Yet, the atmosphere on the bridge remained intensely charged. Commander Krell was no longer watching the anomaly data. He was watching the internal systems logs, replaying the moment of launch over and over. The data confirmed what his eyes had seen. The ship's own logic network had decided to operate at levels deemed impossible by its creators, all because of a simple, untechnical demand from a human. Krell left the command chair and walked over to Elara's station. The systems specialist was equally absorbed, reviewing the ship's ancient core programming, trying to find the key to the impossible boost in performance. "Elara," Krill began, his voice barely a whisper. "Find the origin of the logic lock. It was self-imposed. The system must have left a trace, a reason why it considered all of our safety protocols and technical demands incomplete." Ilara nodded, her hands moving across the console in a focused blur. "I have already pushed past the current operating logs, Commander. The launch lock was triggered by a module I don't recognize, a sublayer of the ship's original core programming, decades older than the main computer. It's written in the foundational language of the ship's long-dead builders." She brought up a new holographic screen. It was filled with incredibly complex flowing symbols, the script of a species that vanished from the galaxy ages ago, leaving behind only their ships and their secrets. Ilara initiated a deep decryption algorithm, running the alien script against all known historical linguistic databases. The process was slow, agonizingly so, until one line finally crystallized into a readable galactic standard text. The line appeared in the center of the display, stark and simple. "A vessel is only as strong as the conviction of its master. To hesitate is to break." Krell read the line twice. Conviction, hesitation, these are emotional, psychological concepts, not engineering principles. The builders of this ship were known for their absolute technical perfection. "That is what we were taught, Commander," Ilara replied, her voice now filled with the professional excitement of a massive discovery. "But this core module tells a different story. I'm finding more. The logic network isn't designed for technical safety. It's designed for existential purpose. It locks itself down if the command carries too much doubt, too much fear of failure. Our carefully calculated, multiple redundancy launch sequence, focused on minimizing risk, was read by the core as a sign of profound doubt." Ilara pointed to the log of the humans command, where Krell and the crew had seen a meaningless demand, "Lift us and take us to the target." The core had logged it as a singularity of intent. Alex, who had been listening quietly, walked closer, looking at the ancient script. "It makes sense. For us, in high-stakes situations, we often throw out the manual. We focus on the goal and commit completely to it, even when the data says we might fail. It's called courage or maybe stubbornness. We don't run at 99% safety. We run at 100% belief." Krell looked from the human to the screen, where the ancient alien philosophy was slowly being uncovered. The alien species of the Galactic Council were naturally predisposed to logical, step-by-step thinking. They built in 5 backup systems and analyzed every danger before acting. They could not command the Starship because they were too perfectly rational to accept the 100% commitment the old core demanded. Their logic always included a factor for retreat or recovery, and that factor was read as hesitation. The humans' command had contained no backup plan, no safety margins, only the absolute demand for action. The Starbazer, built to obey perfect, singular conviction, had finally recognized its master. Krell turned to Alex, his multi-jointed head tilted in respect. "For centuries, we viewed humanity's emotional volatility as a weakness, a source of illogical chaos. We saw your boldness as recklessness." He paused, gesturing toward the perfectly stable ship that was running far beyond its blueprints. This ship, built by the most advanced engineers in history, was designed to wait for that recklessness. It was waiting for a mind that could command it with total, unwavering conviction, even when logic dictates caution. Ilara finished translating the final block of code, which was a historical marker, a sort of mission statement left by the original builders. It was the most important discovery of the mission, and it wasn't about a temporal anomaly. It was about the nature of command. Krell read the final line out loud, his voice ringing across the silent bridge.
To reach the unknown, you must first abandon the path of return. The new mission was complete, but a much larger discovery had just been made. Commander Krell, the most logical being on the bridge, had learned that sometimes the most intelligent thing a leader can do is be completely illogical. He had found his new first officer.